Alrighty, I'm going to kick it off. Our group was facilitated by Maria Vejo Pareja, Adenia Fleming, and Jeanette Perlo, Shelley Gaynor, and myself. Our lab is involved in creating, sharing, and utilizing digitized natural history collections resources through the Florida Museum, as well as through the iDigBio and OVERT project. Next slide. All right, we took on the challenge like many other groups in translating biodiversity data concepts to both the elementary and high school levels. Next slide. And finally, the subject areas of focus are biology and the nature of science through the lens of collecting biodiversity occurrence data. And I'm going to give it away to the educators that participated and created this.
Hi, good morning, everybody. First thing is we went into the essential question, and you see it's broken up into two parts. We went with elementary and high school. We didn't have any middle school representation, but the idea was to see how do scientists record data in nature, and on the high school level is how biology is studied as a science. So you can see how they build on each other. You'll see that we have some of the tools listed down at the bottom that allow you to kind of benefit these, and these tools will be pretty beneficial to the kids as we go. Can we get the next slide? Now, time needed, we have limited time, so we did kind of get an idea as to how this would work with some of the classes and some of the programs. So the elementary school, you have 5 50-minute sessions, which should allow this whole lesson plan to work properly. And then the high school, you have obviously bigger periods, so 1 to 3 90-minute sessions, depending on how advanced the kids are. Next presenter and next slide. Thank you.
Hi, we did the prior knowledge, and elementary school, basically they need to understand their 5 senses and how they work, and ability to identify the difference between living and non-living things. High school, they went into further the scientific method, how to use their cell phone apps to collect data, not just to text each other, how to connect research on the internet and know what latitude and longitude is. Next slide, please. Materials and resources. In the elementary, it's basically a notebook and a pen or pencil and the hours. High school, we got more into smartphone with weather apps, the iNaturalist app, and when you go back in the room, you have the computer, the internet, and the iDigBio website. And we have the different websites, visuals on there for you guys. Next slide and next presenter.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vicki Craig. I teach at Westport High School, and I'm the high school person. I teach the dual enrollment there. So like a lot of other people, we focused on different grade levels. So these are standards that really kind of cross between elementary and high school, focusing on the nature of science. So not going to read all those for you. So next up is Carrie.
Hi, guys. Everyone hears me, right? I'm good. So we looked at our learning goals and objectives, which are actually fairly similar across elementary and high school and can certainly be modified for middle school. But mostly we just want to get children used to collecting data. So what is data? How do we make these observations? How do we record that data? And how are we using our senses? So what do the kids hear outside? Do they hear a bird chirping? What does the bird look like that they hear? About how big is that bird? So just to get them to understand color, relative size, understand why it's important for scientists to collect this data. And then as they progress as high schoolers, they're going to look into more details about that and how to use the apps, how to look more in the databases, how to actually conduct the research that scientists do. Next slide. So we looked at how to differentiate this lesson based on students' abilities. So for some of our struggling learners, perhaps provide them with the sample list of words to use when describing their senses. Provide them with more instruction on how to use different tools. So let's say they go outside and we're comparing different types of leaves. Demonstrate again, like how would I use a ruler? If I use a magnifying glass, what type of details would I be looking for? So just provide a little bit more of that instruction to them. As students are older for high school, perhaps teachers can provide a sample list of possible species they may find. So more of like a field guide to help those students. And certainly pairing kids together is always beneficial. For your high content students, encouraging them to write more detailed descriptions, perhaps dig a little further into using different scientific tools, and connect them with some scientists or get them to look at what type of research is currently being done at the University of Florida. And then ESOL students, Google Translate, again, pairing them together. The iNaturalist app translates into different languages, so that's available as well. Next slide. And then this is more of an outline of specific activities to do. So my plan was actually to share with students the iDigBio online database first and show them what types of information is already cataloged. What can you find in museums? Show them how over the years, lots of information has been gathered and cataloged, and what specifically in Florida are we looking for? Where could different specimens be found? When we talk about living things, we're talking about plants and we're talking about animals. Then take them outside and allow them to do some of that hands-on exploration. And again, depending upon what grade level your students are, it might be as simple in early elementary as looking at the different colors of the objects and the sounds they make. But as they get older, it'll be using more tools, looking at some of that latitude and longitude to record exactly where different specimens can be found. We looked at what types of higher order thinking questions would you want to use to guide your instruction. So what type of information do scientists collect? Why do they collect data? How do we use our senses to make observations to record? What tools can we use? And then also really getting some meaningful discussions, perhaps in partners or in small group and then whole group. How do we compare our data and why is it important to compare our data? And a lot of that information, again, you could find, look at iDigBio, you could see over the years how there are so many different specimens of perhaps the same species, but you could look at, all of the different data that has been gathered about those specimens. Next slide. And Vicki.
Okay, so for the high school end, we really wanted to use the iDigBio or the iNaturalist database. So getting students outdoors, which is always really important to me, and having them use their senses just like the elementary school level students. When I've done a similar activity like this, and there's a sample at the end if you wanted to look at it of some sample student work, where I make them use a old-fashioned drawing notebook. They have to use their senses. They have to use a lot of other data in there, such as the current conditions, temperature, wind, humidity. They can get that off of a weather app on where they're at, just like a biologist would do in the field, and actually sketch the plant or animal that we see. We'll have a plant in the courtyard, so I usually kind of focus on that. The animals are sketchy, what we might see, except for crows. Then also use Google Slides. I have them take pictures with their phone and then embed those pictures into the Google Slide presentation, and then they have to give me a description using their senses. And I tell them to think about if a person was blind and couldn't see what you're seeing, how would you describe these items, plant and animal? So it usually ends up being a really good activity. For the animals, if we see any, or if they did it at home, I teach them what an ethogram is, and they could do that on their own and then submit that. Especially if we're going to be virtual, it might be a great opportunity for them to go outside in the yard and see what's out there and watch these animals' behavior over a certain period of time. And lots of apps out there that are great. And then the iDigBio, kind of compare and contrast what we find in our campus or around our home with what is in the database with the iDigBio. And actually on iNaturalist, they could be a little citizen scientist as well. So next slide. Ed?
Sorry, I forgot to take off mute. Hi, again, Ed Grimes from Sunshine Elementary in Lehigh, Florida. One of the things that we wanted to make sure we emphasized on was the idea of the vocabulary and what it means with these kids. It doesn't mean anything if these kids are taking classes and reading about science and not really understanding what the words mean. So we wanted to make sure there's some emphasis on certain key words. You'll see that the elementary school level is listed. It's a shorter list. Same thing with the high school, it's a little larger, and obviously this would grow and this will only be for this first quarter, but it gives an idea as to what you want to do and how you want to build on it. That's pretty much it. Next slide, next presenter.
Okay,
The
for
next slide, I believe, is assessments.
Carrie, you there?
yes.
Sorry, Carrie, is that you? Go ahead.
It says my name on
Or
elementary.
Carrie or Debbie? Debbie, sorry, me. Amanda Boo Boo.
Debbie, you go ahead.
Okay, fine, it happens. Okay, thanks. Elementary school, students will be evaluated anecdotally, take observations. As a first grade teacher, they're so excited about being outside. I usually would bring a checklist about the skills I would want to assess and check it off when they see it. Students will also take a sheet of information on the chosen species, and they would draw it, describe it using their senses and the tools that they use to gather the information.
And for high school, I made an anticipation guide. You can click on that link. And I also made a rubric. I always use rubrics for any of these projects that students are going to submit. You can click on that and look at it. And then if you clicked on that samples link, it shows 2 of my students' work for part of this. I didn't know anything about iDigBio really, or the iNaturalist app. So I'll be planning on incorporating that as well. So you can click and see what my students actually did, which they did some really cool stuff. And I think that next slide, that is it. Thank you.